Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm taking a look at another Shadow Pokemon that was just released into the world of Pokemon Go, Shadow Charjabug. Now, in previous metas, Charjabug was a top meta threat, as it was a terrific core breaker into so many top teams. But time and power creep has honestly driven Charjabug out of the meta, and a rework to Discharge that has made it a pretty terrible move. But now, with Shadow Charjabug dealing more damage, the question has to be asked, is it enough to bring Charjabug back to some relevancy? So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's go Shadow Charjabug. And in game number 1, we're off to a perfectly even lead, leading Toedscruel into Toedscruel. For this Charjabug team, I'm running the team that I hit rank 1 in the world with, but with a different electric type. I've subbed out Dedenne for the Shadow Charjabug. My Toedscruel does lose charge attack priority here. We trade Wraps, and I save switch into Lapras. My opponent is going to bank energy and send in Tentacruel, hoping against hope that I do not have Skull Bash, but I do. And Skull Bash is going to inflict massive damage onto that Tentacruel. With my defense being boosted as well, I don't have to respect a Sludge Wave as it would not be lethal. So I no shield, they have the Sludge Wave, but it does not matter, and I exit with the energy loaded. Opponent brings in Lapras as their final Pokemon, and I really do not want to concede this farm down. So I'm gonna get aggressive, and it's time, Charjabug hits the field. These Volt Switches are doing a lot of damage. The only way that I think I lose this game is if my opponent catches a Discharge, so I will end up firing off an X-Scissor. X-Scissor will still hit for neutral damage if they no-shield, but if they catch, obviously it would pick up the KO. My opponent does end up no-shielding, so a pretty nice call by them, but Shadow Charjabug should be healthy enough that this should not matter. In comes the Toedscruel. Toedscruel will fire off the Wrap. Obviously, Wrap comes with a guaranteed defense drop. Can I get to the back-to-back X-Scissors? Throwing 2 in the move would have been better timing, but I wasn't quite sure that I could live the third Mud Slap, but as it turns out, I can. Shadow Charjabug hangs on. We make it to X-Scissor number 2. That's going to be big damage, KOing the Toedscruel, and then all that's left in the back is my opponent's Lapras, which I can Psywave down with my own and take the game 1 win. Moving to game number 2, picking up a good lead Toedscruel against Shadow Scizor. Shadow Scizor just cannot knock out here with a Trailblaze, but I like to preserve some health on the Toedscruel, so I will put up a shield. There's a Night Slash and a safe switch into a Azumarill. I could have potentially gone into the Lapras, but I decide to put the Shadow Charjabug here. My opponent will go for the Ice Beam. Ice Beam not going to pick up the knockout by any means, and now I will get to fire off the Discharge. This is a Shadow Discharge. Azumarill hangs on, and I have to throw a second move. Honestly, that was a pretty disappointing amount of damage from Discharge. I know Discharge is one of the worst moves in the game in terms of damage per energy. It's a pretty poor move, but even still, I was expecting to be able to farm down there, so that is very unfortunate. I'm able to grab a shield from that Credilli, and now I will get to fire off this Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb is going to connect. Opponent, oh, looks like they may have thought it was a charge attack priority tie, as they end up throwing on alignment. Grass Knot lands, it will not KO, but that's a really nice catch onto the Scizor. Scizor obviously going to be double resisting Seed Bomb, and now things could get a little bit uncomfortable. I still do have the Charjabug, but it's very, very low health. I'm just gonna have to bring in the Lapras, shield once, and farm down. My switch clock just did come up, but I think I'm going to save that to try and potentially reset a debuff once the Credilli Rock Tombs me later on. Back in comes the Credilli. They're already approaching a range where I can potentially knock them out with the Sparkling Aria. They have the Grass Knot right now, but I don't think they're going to throw it right away. So I farm up, try for the catch, fail the catch, and now that Grass Knot is going to land no matter what. But Lapras is very bulky. Can I hang on? Yes, I can. Lapras is just too bulky. We tank the Grass Knot, fire off the Aria, down goes Credilli, and we're able to escape with a very close win. Same leads in the next match as it's Toedscruel once again into the Shadow Scizor. Scizor is going to be able to strike first. Last time I shielded and my opponent ended up switching out. This time I'm just going to let it go. It is going to be the Trailblaze. I return fire with the Wrap, and if they no shield, then the next Mud Slap will knock them out. They do just that. Toedscruel able to win the lead, and they're not going to get a lot of farm with whatever they bring in here. Opponent brings in a Jellicent. A 2-hex head start is unfortunate. I send in the Shadow Charjabug, but Shadow Charjabug is really behind on energy. I'm going to be no-shielding, expecting they're going to go for a Surf Bait, and they do, but even that absolutely crushes the poor Charjabug. Oh my goodness, Charjabug forced to put up a shield as they go for the Surf. And now I will be firing off the Discharge. If they shield, I have back-to-back loaded. They're going to no shield, and in the back, is a Pokemon that I do not beat. At least I don't think so. That's the Shadow Malamar. Oh, actually, a regular Malamar. I stand corrected. The Shadow Aura that I saw was from the Charjabug. I send in Lapras, but this is such a bad matchup. I have to call that they're not going for the superpower here, so I will no shield. It is going to be the foul play. Not only does my opponent have a pacing advantage here, but they triple resist my Psywaves. So my Psywaves basically do nothing. I will put up the shield. I'm going to need a Miracle Catch or for Charjabug to survive the Psywaves, and I just don't think Shadow Charjabug is holding on. I predict that they are going to overfarm and throw right as I get to the move, so I'm just going to farm up, but they throw earlier than I predicted, and that, I think, is going to cost me, as foul play will pick up the KO. In comes the Charjabug. It cannot get the move, and that's game over. Great lead in the next match. Toedscruel into Shadow Drapion. Opponent safe switches into Golisopod, and I will respond with the Shadow Charjabug. Shadow Charjabug is frail enough that I think if an Aqua Jet lands, they may be able to Fury Cutter down, so I'm not going to risk it. I will put up the shield, safe in the knowledge that I can apply some pretty significant pressure with Volt Switch. My opponent decides to let it go, more than happy to take the shield advantage. In comes Drapion. Drapion is farming up, but they're going to take a ton of damage from X-Scissor. X-Scissor is going to be shielded. Drapion continues to farm. Drapion, oh no, they play to a CMP tie that they do not win. That is a CMP tie that typically favors Drapion, but if you have a mediocre IV Charjabug and they have a really good Drapion, Charjabug can actually win it, and that costs my opponent their final shield. Unfortunately for them, in the back, they have Dusclops, and they do not have the Psywave bulk point, which means my Psywaves are absolutely shredding them. They can fire off Shadow Punch after Shadow Punch, but it's not going to matter. They've already lost about 40% of their health bar just from these Psywaves, and now I am 2 Psywaves off of the back-to-back Sparkling Arias. First, will get them low. Second, will pick up the knockout and deny their ability to fire off their next move. This Sparkling Aria will KO. In comes the Toedscruel opponent, farming up, trying to get enough energy to win the game, but it's just not going to happen. Toedscruel, Wrap, picks up the KO, and that's going to be a win. We'd see an absolute nightmare lead in the next match. Toedscruel into Shadow Giratina. Honestly, I completely forgot about Giratina when putting this team together, and I am triple weak to Giratina, so this is a huge problem. I'm going to bank this energy and then save switch into the Lapras. At the very least, Psywaves will add up here. My opponent will fire off a potential Ancient Power, so I will put up a shield, and they do full send it. Now they're going to bring out Shadow Scizor, and this is going to be a really tough game to win. Shadow Scizor going to be hit with a Sparkling Aria. They put up the shield. I make it to a second Aria, but they're just always going to double shield. Overfarm close to 100 energy, and then I really don't see a path forward for me to win this game. This is just so bad. Oh my goodness. I let the Lapras go, but they already have over a Night Slash stored in reserve. In comes the Charjabug. These Volt Switches do add up quite a bit, but man, this Night Slash is just going to do way too much damage. Shadow Charjabug, that's huge damage. Opponent throws on alignment in case I decided to undertap the discharge. Smart play by them, and now back in comes Giratina. But I think I might see an opportunity to potentially win this game. X-Scissor, switch, farm down with the Toedscruel, but no! The Giratina survives on 1 HP. I lose all that energy, and with that, any chance of winning this game. In comes Scizor. I farm down the Scizor in the back. It's a Primeape, and if I got that farm down with the Toedscruel, that could have been a win. We get the dream lead in the next match. Toedscruel into Marowak. Opponent ups the spice level dramatically by safe switching into Emolga. Emolga on the lead would be an absolute nightmare, as it would do very well into both the Lapras and the Toedscruel. But Charjabug is my one Pokemon that can actually handle it, as long as I don't let an Acrobatics land. But unfortunately, I end up shielding a Discharge Bait. I don't know if an Acrobatics would one-shot, but I know the Shadow Charjabug does not have the bulk of the regular, and Acrobatics is a very powerful move, and Emolga has an insanely high attack stat. So I will end up double shielding. I end up shielding 2 discharges. They're going to switch into the Marowak. I bank quite a bit of energy, and now Marowak is just completely helpless against Toedscruel. Toedscruel is Marowak's worst nightmare. It completely disintegrates this Pokemon. I fire off the Seed Bomb, that connects, Marowak gets farmed down, and I still have energy on my Charjabug to potentially snipe something later on. In the back is going to be Galarian Moltres. Moltres, not going to take a lot of damage from the Wrap, but all damage will be helpful. Opponent now going to switch into the Emolga. Emolga will fire off energy. They need to go for the Acrobatics to pick up the KO. They try the Discharge, but Trainer, that's triple resisted. Oh no! There is never a health range in which the triple resistant discharge is KOing. I get to send in the Charjabug, farm down, and presumably one-shot the Moltres here with the discharge. Moltres has already taken some damage. Shadow Discharge still somehow does not KO. I don't understand how bad of a move Discharge is. How is it still not knocking out? The good news is we get the win because Lapras farms down, but my goodness. We see a very neutral lead in the next match, Toedscruel into Regidrago. I would give a slight edge to Regidrago here because Dragon Energy hits a lot harder than Wrap, but even so, it's not the worst lead. I'm able to land the Wrap, which is valuable damage, and now I am going to call that they're not going for the Dragon Energy, and I get it right. There's the switch into Lapras. Lapras going to look for a farm down opponent, is going to make a last second charge attack. I decide to let this go. Dragon Energy is going to connect, and now out comes Shadow Scizor. This is a problem because I'm unable to reach a second Sparkling Aria. My opponent's going to get a farm down with the Scizor, and Scizor is not the most comfortable Pokemon for Shadow Charjabug to see, just because Night Slash does so much damage. I do have the Bullet Punch resist, which is very valuable, but Night Slash just hits way too hard, and it looks like I can't even farm down here without having to burn a Final Shield. I really hope that I can, but look at this. They survive, and they make another move. That is just devastating for Charjabug, as now I've lost all my health and all my shields. I have so much energy on the Charjabug. If they bring in the Drago, I snipe it down, and I can. In the back, it's Diggersby, and unfortunately, this is just not a win. I will fire off the Wrap, just so that way my X-Scissors will do more damage. My opponent ends up no-shielding it, but even if this was a Seed Bomb, it wouldn't have put them into X-Scissor range either way. I'll fire off the X-Scissor. For science, let's see how much an X-Scissor does to a -1 defense Diggersby. It does quite a bit, but unfortunately, it's just not enough to take the win as they still have the shield remaining, and we will unfortunately drop that game. Let's hop into the next match, and it's a much better lead, Toedscruel into Weezing. They save switch into Golisopod. I respond with the Shadow Charjabug. This feels like some deja vu, as we've seen a few Golisopod save switches so far. Golisopod will go for the Aqua Jet. Again, these Volt Switches are just terrifying damage. But honestly, the Volt Switch damage is not what I've had the issue with. It's just with Discharge being terrible. Golisopod will fire back with the Aqua Jet. I will burn the Final Shield, look for the farm down, and get the farm down. That's really nice. My opponent will look to waste my energy here from the Charjabug on the Weezing, and I don't really want to let that happen. So I'm going to bank a Discharge and just aggressively switch into the Lapras. This way, I can save that Discharge in case there's a problematic Pokemon in the back like Galarian Moltres. Sludge will land. That doesn't do a ton of damage. I get to the Aria right before they get their second Sludge, which is very clutch timing. They let that go, and in the back, it's a Shadow Swampert, and this game will be a win. Swampert can go for the Sludge, but Lapras is too bulky. Lapras will hang on. We get to the Aria, and this is just game over for my opponent, as this Aria will force the Final Shield, and the move we have stored on Charjabug from earlier will come in clutch. As I get to fire off the X-Scissor, look at the damage. Swampert hangs on. Only a shred of HP remaining, as Hydro Cannon will pick up the KO, but one slap from the Toedscruel means that's a win. Hopping to the final match, and it's a very bad lead, Toedscruel into Golisopod. I save switch Lapras. They stay in with the Golisopod to connect with an X-Scissor. X-Scissor will do quite a lot of damage. I'm going to farm up to the Skull Bash, bait, and I'm very happy that I baited with the Sparkling Aria, as they end up making a catch onto Credilli. Credilli, very far behind on energy here. I will bait a potential Ice Beam to see if I can grab a shield. The bait is successful as I'm able to grab a shield from Credilli. That's very, very helpful. Now, I will get to get them pretty low with the Sparkling Aria. My opponent is deep into the red HP, and this is perfect as one Mud Slap should be enough to pick up the KO. So Rock Tomb will knock me out. I send in the Toedscruel, and they get the damage registration error. The Mud Slap should have KO'd there, but doesn't, allowing them to make a last-second Rock Tomb. I send in the Charjabug as they're going to be bringing in the Golisopod. Golisopod is staying in to fire off the Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet will be shielded. I'm just looking for as much farm as I can possibly get. Golisopod does not succumb to the Volt Switch, and they're able to force my Final Shield. In the back, that's bad news for me. It's Shadow Kanto Ninetales. Ninetales immediately hit with the Discharge. I'm going for Discharge number 2, and I need my Switch Clock to be up here. This Discharge is going to be shielded. My Switch Clock is not up, and I'm forced to throw an extra Volt Switch, and that loses me the game. Oh my goodness. If my Switch Clock was up in time, I could have switched and got more Mud Slaps, but unfortunately, it was not, and we will end up dropping that game. And now some final thoughts on Shadow Charjabug and its place in the meta. Honestly, after using Shadow Charjabug for a lot of games today, I've been reminded why the regular Charjabug is a Pokemon that sees no play right now, and that's just because it's really tough being a bug type that loses to other bug types. Not only that, but you're a bug type that also does not do great into the Mud Slappers. I do think that the Shadow Charjabug does help against the Mud Slappers more, because against something like a Marowak with Shadow X Scissor, you could potentially pick up a knockout with the back-to-back X Scissors. So if you're in, like, let's say a 1-0 shield scenario, that matchup feels quite a bit better. But I do feel like this is a particular Pokemon where I really felt the effects of the lack of bulk in many matchups. There was a lot of times where I was used to Charjabug, at least back in its heyday, being a pretty bulky mon. It could take hits, you didn't really have to commit shields to it. But even in matchups that I thought it would do well, like Shadow Scizor, those matchups never really felt particularly comfortable. So I do think that Shadow Charjabug, it's probably worth grabbing a decent one, just because we never know what future meta updates will look like. Obviously, there's a massive one that should be heading our way in September, and potentially with future move updates, or with meta shifting, with top Pokemon getting nerfed, new Pokemon rising from the ashes courtesy of move updates that breathe life into them. We could potentially see Shadow Charjabug have play in the future, but for right now, I don't think it has any play whatsoever. So when it comes to shadow hunting during this event, I would definitely put the Giratina as priority number 1. You absolutely need to make sure you get the Shadow Giratina, and from there, Talonflame definitely a tier below that, and then the Shadow Charjabug even a tier lower than that. The other shadows that have released, I believe it's Starmie and Toucannon. Those Pokemon, I think having the Shadow really makes them worse, to be honest. Like in Starmie's case, it was already a Pokemon that couldn't really one-shot things neutrally, and more often than not could get hit with one charge move and farm down, and I think with the Shadow that only makes that problem a bit worse. And Toucannon is, well, Toucannon. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.